Welcome to English Mirror. Freud is a quintessential part of literary theory. If you want to understand Freud, you have to probe into the four models developed by Sigmund Freud. This is a short presentation which will help you to understand Freud's life and philosophy. Freud's remarkable achievement is that he tried and largely succeeded in expanding the meaning and range of the concept of mind or psyche. Freud had no deep grounding in philosophy, but was educated generally in classical and German literature and culture and trained specifically in the biological sciences. Freud has been grouped with Marx and Nietzsche as part of the core of the modernist tradition of the hermeneutics of suspicion. According to this general stance, what is obvious on the surface is less fundamental than what lies hidden underneath, which in Freud's case is the work of the drives and of the unconscious parts of the psyche. Freud and psychoanalysis were used to provide Marxism with a theory of subjectivity, while Marxism was used to provide a framework for Freud's limited social theory. Born in Moravia, he lived and worked most of his life in Vienna, interrupted by studies in Paris in the 1880s, occasional trips abroad, and then exiled from the Nazis in London, where he died. He was, in W. H. Auden's words, no more a person now but a whole climate of opinion. By the 1960s, particularly in the United States, psychoanalysis was the crucial catalyst. Since the 1960s, the psychoanalytic movement has continually fragmented, and last rites are perennially being pronounced over the corpus of Freud's theory and therapy. To understand Freud's project is to explore the interrelation between Freud as the discoverer of the unconscious, of the crucial part of dreams play as the royal road to the unconscious, of infantile bisexuality, and of the centrality of repression in individual and group life as the inventor of a theoretical edifice whose purpose is to cure disturbed patients and as the founder of an international movement still extant today. His basic interpretive stance seeks to dismantle or demythologize existing values and institutions in the name of something more basic or fundamental. Freud was a genuine bourgeois paterfamilias of the German-speaking Central European Jewish sort. His attitudes on sex and gender roles were thoroughly conventional, though he provided the intellectual dynamite to explode those conventional positions. He was never an observing Jew. Freud was trained in the natural and biological sciences, in medicine and neurology in particular. The positivist dream of formulating scientific laws of mental functioning exerted a great influence on Freud. The many phases of psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis is first a theory of therapy, which is neither a purely cognitive process of self-understanding nor a quasi-hypnotic state in which the analyst cures by suggestion. Freud rejected the use of hypnosis because, among other reasons, he wanted the patient to assume conscious responsibility for his or her cure. What brings the patient to analysis is a pattern of dysfunction and unhappiness, often expressed through the bodily symptoms. Freud soon discovered that patients offered resistance to being cured, but that, paradoxically, the source of resistance and the key to cure were the same thing, what he called transference. The title of an essay of 1914 concisely sums up the process as recollection, repetition, and working through. But Freud's theoretical centerpiece was a theory of the psyche, sometimes called his metapsychology. Freud developed four dominant models of mental life. They are the dynamic, the economic, the topographical structural, and the developmental. The dynamic model stresses the psychic conflict between individual impulses and the dictates of reality. The conflict between the reality and pleasure principles was one way Freud had of articulating this dynamic model of mental functioning. Central to the dynamic model is the instinctual dualism Freud retained throughout his life. In his first version, Freud pitted the sexual drives against the ego or survival drives, the urge to perpetuate the race against the urge for individual survival. The second one is economic model. A second, less well-known model of the psyche is Freud's economic model. The term economic refers to the nature of the psyche when it is conceived of as disposing over a fixed quantity of libidinal energy supplied by the drives. Another particularly important example of Freud's use of the economic model is his explanation of morning work. When someone loses a loved one, or an object of great devotion, or even a cause, morning work is the process whereby the libidinal catexis, namely love, devotion, and dedication to that object, is gradually withdrawn and redirected elsewhere. The third one is topographical structural model. Freud's topographical structural model of the psyche has become much more familiar over the years. The basic idea of the unconscious in Freud's theory is not just that things are not present to consciousness. It is that they cannot be brought back to consciousness through an act of moral or epistemological will. It is not that I forget something. It is that I forget that I forget it. It is a role of dream analysis and free association to provide access to the unconscious parts of the mind. In Freud's topographical model of the mind, the unconscious is a system with its own rules of functioning. For instance, there is no sense of time in the unconscious, nor does the law of contradiction or negation work there. It is represented as a chaotic realm of forces and energies, images, and symbols, all mixed up together. Between it and the preconscious lies a firm boundary of censorship. Based on an infantile wish, usually sexual, the dream is linked up with dream thoughts in the present as they are triggered off by the day's events and are transformed by the dream work such as concentration, displacement, symbolization, and considerations of representability into the manifest dream. But by the early 1920s, Freud's topographical model had become a structural model. This new model retained the three-story structure but was now divided into the id, ego, superego. The id, the it, is the realm of drive, representations, and repressed materials. The ego, the I, is the part of the psyche that mediates between inside and outside. And the superego, the over I, is a source of values and ideals and by implication enables the making of moral judgments. The fourth model is developmental model. Freud also spoke of the mind in developmental terms as an entity in which the functions and structures of the psyche emerge gradually, though never automatically, over time. Freud's developmental model, focusing primarily on the individual's affective rather than cognitive or moral development, presupposes a primal unity between organism and the world. A sense of separation from the world leads to the gradual development of sexuality through stages of libidinal investment in parts of the body, the oral, anal, and genital regions. It is in this developmental context that Freud's idea of the Oedipal complex must be placed. The concept refers to what happens at the early childhood stage from the age of 4 to 5 years when children realize that they must give up the parent of the opposite sex as their sexual object choice. In broadest terms, Freud's theory always assumes that individual analysis is implicitly social and cultural commentary. As he once observed, individual psychology is already social and collective. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, please share and subscribe.